At Auschwitz, in the last days of July 1941, guards lined up 10 prisoners in the yard of Block 11 and told them they would die of starvation, punishment for another man who had escaped the night before. One of the 10, a Polish sergeant named Franciszek Gajowniczek, cried out that he had a wife and children he would never see again. Nobody in that yard had any reason to expect what happened next. A prisoner stepped out of the ranks, not one of the 10, and walked toward the SS officer running the selection. He was a Catholic priest, he said, older, with no family of his own. He asked to take the sergeant's place. The officer, apparently surprised that anyone would volunteer for this, asked who he was again, and then agreed. The sergeant went back into the ranks. The priest went into the basement with 9 other men. His name was Maximilian Kolbe, prisoner number 16,670, and 8 years earlier, he had already built one of the largest religious media operations in Europe. He was born Rajmund Kolbe in January 1894 in a small mill town in central Poland to a father who wove cloth and a mother who worked as a midwife. He entered the conventual Franciscans as a teenager, took the religious name Maximilian, and was ordained a priest in Rome in 1918. A year before that ordination, with 6 companions, he had already founded a religious movement called the Militia of the Immaculate, built from the start around the newest technology he could get his hands on, the printing press. By the late 1930s, the friary he established outside Warsaw, Niepokalanów, had grown into something without real precedent. A monastery of roughly 700 friars that also ran one of Poland's largest media operations, a daily newspaper, a monthly magazine reaching hundreds of thousands of readers, and its own radio station. In 1930, Kolbe left Poland for Japan, and within a year had founded a second friary on a hillside outside Nagasaki, a mission he called the Garden of the Immaculata. He built it facing away from the city centre, tucked behind a ridge, a placement some locals reportedly considered impractical at the time, for a mission meant to reach people, not hide from them. He stayed 6 years, publishing a Japanese edition of his magazine, before returning to Poland in 1936 to take charge of Niepokalanów itself. Nobody at the time had any reason to think about that hillside twice. 15 years later, that would change. Germany invaded Poland in September 1939, and within weeks, the Gestapo arrested Kolbe for the first time, holding him 3 months before releasing him that December. Niepokalanów kept operating anyway, sheltering refugees regardless of nationality or religion, wounded soldiers, displaced civilians, and, by some estimates, well over 1,000 Jewish refugees who found shelter there for months at a time. The friary's presses, officially shut down, kept printing. On February 17, 1941, the Gestapo came back, arrested Kolbe a second time, and sent him to Pawiak prison in Warsaw. 3 months later, he was transferred again to a camp in southern Poland the Germans called Auschwitz. He arrived at Auschwitz in late May 1941. Like every prisoner there, he was put to forced labor and, by multiple accounts, singled out for especially brutal treatment. And like a small number of priests who ended up in the camp, he found ways to keep functioning as one anyway. Hearing confessions in secret, sharing what little food he had, offering what comfort could still be offered in a place built to strip it away. None of that had a name yet. It was simply how he spent the 10 weeks before the event that would define how the world remembers him. Late in July 1941, a prisoner vanished from Kolbe's barracks. Camp policy on escapes was collective and deliberately brutal. For every man who got away, 10 more would be picked to die of starvation, as a warning to everyone left behind. The camp's Lagerführer, an SS officer named Karl Fritzsch, walked the ranks and pointed out 10 men. One of them, Sergeant Franciszek Gajonicek, cried out, by several accounts, for the wife and children he was certain he'd never see again. Kolbe stepped out of formation and asked to take his place, identifying himself simply as a Catholic priest, older, with no family. Fritzsch agreed. Gajonicek was sent back into the ranks. Kolbe was sent, with 9 other men, into the starvation cells beneath Block 11. The 10 men were locked underground with no food and no water. A Polish prisoner named Bruno Borgowiec, assigned to the block as an orderly, survived the war and later testified to what he witnessed there. By his account, the cell didn't fall into the silence the guards expected. Kolbe led prayers and hymns, the other men answering him in unison, and reportedly had a particular gift for calming those around him as their bodies gave out. Days passed. Men died one by one. After roughly 2 weeks, most of the 10 were dead, and only a handful, Kolbe among them, were still alive. On August 14, 1941, camp personnel ended it directly, with a lethal injection into each remaining man's arm. Kolbe was 5 months from his 47th birthday. His body was cremated the next day, the Feast of the Assumption. Franciszek Gajonicek survived the war, 5 years across 2 camps in total, and was eventually reunited with his wife, though the sons he'd cried out for in that yard had already been killed in a bombing raid months before liberation reached him. He lived another 50 years, long enough to stand in St. Peter's Square in 1971 when Pope Paul VI beatified Kolbe, and again in 1982 when Pope John Paul II made an unusual decision, canonizing Kolbe not as a confessor, the ordinary category for a holy life, but as a martyr, reasoning that a system built on hatred of human dignity had, in effect, killed a man for the faith that dignity rested on. 6 years before that first beatification, half a world away, the Friary Kolbe had built on that oddly angled hillside outside Nagasaki was still standing when the bomb fell in August 1945. Shielded, by most accounts, by the ridge behind it, a few windows broken and little else. His feast day now falls on August 14th, the date of his death. Gajonicek died in 1995 and is buried, like the man who once took his place in that basement, at Niepokalanów.